Beyond Belief Sobriety is a podcast for people who are seeking or who have found a secular path to recovery from addictions of all kinds. Well, let me tell you, this is sure to be an interesting episode. John Huey is back to have a conversation about Alcoholics Anonymous and whether atheist and agnostic AA members are perhaps wasting their time working within the fellowship. He once again has gone through the AA Beyond Belief Facebook group and has found uh, person after person struggling with what to do with this AA thing as a non-believer, and he is feeling pretty passionate about things right now and has a lot to talk about. So I'm just going to let a conversation take place and see where it goes. I have a feeling. It's going to go. It's going to be pretty hot.
Okay, let's see. It
We'll
may
see.
it may go south. We've never had one crash and burn, but hopefully this
No,
will be the first.
I know that you're pretty passionate about this. So
Well, we'll
what's the
see.
beef? What's
We'll
the
see.
beef? What's your
We'll
what's
see.
what?
I'm going to try to keep my pleasant, sweet, and calm demeanor as
All right.
always as I go through this.
All right.
But yeah, there's a certain amount of passion attached to some of this. And basically, couple weeks ago, before I went through my various, I'm still going through computer stuff here, but
Mm,
fortunately, this thing is working tonight. Before I went through all my computer audio and video upgrade stuff, I sent you this. I sent you a brief email,
mm-hmm.
and basically, what I was postulating, what I wanted to talk about on this one, just to frame it, because who knows where it's going to end up in the
Sure.
end. Maybe someone will have to bring me back to what I framed here initially. Maybe you, since you're the only one else on the screen. I guess it'll have to be you, unless we get bombed.
Right.
Uh, Basically, I wanted to postulate the following: should we talk to or engage with these conventional AA people at all?
Right.
What good does it do them or us for
Right.
us to be involved with them? Are
Mm-hmm.
we giving any net benefits to them or to us because of our involvement one way or the other with them?
Yep.
Are we wasting our time and retarding our progress as independent people in recovery and possibly a totally independent fellowship without that name eventually by being involved with them?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we do that? All right.
And to clarify, and we did this last time. When you say we, you're talking about atheists, agnostics, secular
Right,
people
right.
within
I'm not
Alcoholics
talking
Anonymous.
about conventional members of the program or
Just
even,
just people who.
dedicated big book
Mm-hmm.
believers or dedicated 12 steppers or any
Just
of that.
people who
That's
happen to be
perfectly, yeah,
people
that's
who just
within
happen to
the,
be in Alcoholics Anonymous
yeah,
who don't buy into the
yeah,
religious dogma.
yeah. I mean, I was just communicating with some members of my old noon group that I went to for years. That was a conventional meeting this
Mm-hmm.
week, right? And that group still functions mightily well for them,
Yep.
even though it's been some years since I've been there now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going back and forth with one of the older members there, and somebody hooked me up with somebody else. But I certainly don't get online with them and tell them not to go. I mean,
Right.
it's perfectly, it works for them.
You're t- you're
And
you're you're concerned about the people who are
I'm
posting
what I'm
about
concerned about is about the people on the atheist agnostic spectrum, as always. And as
right.
always, this is just my
And those
opinion.
people who are struggling, the ones who are struggling and
Right,
and and they think that they have to somehow fit into or find a way to
right,
make AA work for them as non-believers.
right. Okay. And let me loop back around to something else, because from time to time, I've had it suggested to me since I came out and became more of a public person regarding this thing, subsequent to our convention in Santa Monica in 2014. I've been asked more than once by various people in various places, well, why don't you're so this way or that way about this thing? Why don't you just go join SOS?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you just go join Smart or
Mm-hmm.
something like that? And basically be happy over there and get out of our hair. Okay.
Right. Which is
It's
insulting.
always the implication, please,
Right.
do not darken our door with your, you know,
Right.
overdriven bullshit. You go over to SOS or you go over to Smart and you can
Mhm.
hang out over there.
Yeah.
And I sort of asked when I was going through this, I was saying, why are these people dealing with this AA stuff over and over and over again? And I was saying, well, why did I?
Mhm.
What am I doing here?
Mhm.
And it sort of looped me back around. I know you recently talked to some smart people that will probably
Right.
be on the podcast before this thing ever gets on. And there was something put up online about Smart, and I hadn't looked at it. I was sober before Smart was ever founded. When it
Right.
first founded, I looked at some of their things and
Mhm.
uh, decided it wasn't for me because
Right.
basically, like maybe even you would ask, I asked when I looked at their program and the way they organize things, where's the fellowship? You know, they've got these tools. They talk
Right.
about triggers. They talk about facilitators. They talk about training. They talk
Yes.
about all. And I said, where the hell is the fellowship?
Right.
Because it's the fellowship and the sharing and the ideas about abstinence that allowed me to reinforce my decision and stay sober. So now I know why I'm not in Smart, because
Yeah. Well,
as that stuff didn't resonate with me in '94, it doesn't resonate with me now.
well, that is one of the great strengths of AA. It's the community. It's the
Right,
culture of
right.
community and the connection that we have with each other. And that's really what works. Bottom line. It's what helps us out the
Absolutely,
most.
absolutely. But why do we need all this other baggage on top of it?
Right.
All right.
Right.
The other thing it led me back to is, I mean, there was a guy that started what became SOS. He recently passed away, a gentleman by the name of James Christopher,
Yeah.
who, as I told you earlier, he used to stop by our DC meeting. For some reason, he was in DC a lot in the
Hmm.
late '80s, early '90s. And I got to know the guy a little bit. And he would
Hmm.
come and pitch us basically every time he showed up. And I think he got a couple of people to, you know, go help start the first local, what became SOS groups. He had a different name originally, became SOS. But I just wouldn't buy it. And the thing about Jim was that to me it seemed more like a cult of personality, somebody who got angry at AA and
Yeah.
decided to sort of screw them or screw with them. At least that's the way it seemed to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it didn't seem very productive since I was pretty happy in DC We Agnostics, which, by the way, is finally going back to face
Great.
on June the 6th. We're going
Good.
to turn this thing off, this machine off,
Hmm.
and we're going to go back doing what we've done from
Yeah.
the beginning, from
That's great.
'88, which is
Yeah.
face to face, which is great. Not to put down how well people are doing on Zoom, which they are,
Sure.
but it was
It's not for
decided.
everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, it was decided by the regular members, the ongoing members, to go back face to face, and the Hill Center will have us back. I'll put up some notices about that when that comes about.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
but yeah, that's what does it for me.
Yeah.
My meetings and my, you know, regular connection with what I refer to as fellowship,
Yeah.
which, quite frankly, is what, I was brought to that within the context of regular AA to begin with,
Yeah.
you know. So I do have some schizophrenic feelings about them.
So, like I've said before, I think that what we're seeing is a huge influx of people into these social media groups who are just learning that there is another way to think about their recovery in AA, and they're just coming to grips with the idea that they are atheists, and some of them might be struggling with coming out like that with their home groups, and I can understand that. And they're in various phases of development. They're just trying to figure things out, and some of them will come to the conclusion that they don't need AA at all. Some of them will come to the conclusion that they can attend secular AA meetings and not have to worry about steps or whatever. Some of them might want to work the steps. There's going to be, everybody's going to find their own way, which is as it should be. You know.
Well, and that's a very kind of sweet way of looking at it,
Hmm.
right? But and I think it accurate to some great degree
Mm-hmm.
for probably a number of people. I'm not going to dispute that with you.
Mm-hmm.
But there are plenty of them we're losing. I've had
Yes.
people walk away from us and say, I have an unnamed friend right now who says, "Why do you mess with them? They're just like the conventional groups.
Right.
It's a waste of my effing time."
Right.
And there are people that I don't. I read you this one, and I'll just there's this guy that said adios to you, secular AA, just this week, and
Go ahead and read it.
he
What'd he
was
say?
talking right. I mean, he said, "Forget it. I'm not going to go deal with you guys." But he said that somehow he got the impression that we were all about character flaws and character defects too.
Mm-hmm.
And that was totally antithetical to his idea of addiction. Where did he get that idea from?
Yeah.
I didn't tell him. You didn't tell him.
No.
Somebody in a meeting must have, one of our meetings, secular meetings, must have told him.
And
Right?
I wish that people would get the whole idea when it comes to how they view their recovery that there is no we, there is no
No,
yet
there's no
you
we. There's an I. There's an
yeah,
I.
it's your recovery
It's my,
and you decide how you want to define it and how you want to
yeah,
describe it and how you want to work it.
my 5 articles on a secular recovery are not the tenets that I banged up on the
Right.
wall of GSO as a different kind of holy writ. It's
Yeah.
just a description of how
It's like
I
that
did.
guy is looking at secular AA as if it's something that has a
Yeah,
defined
well,
program
he's looking at it, but
must walk
you
this one
know,
path, and that's not the way it is.
but in my reply on that group, which I often do if I see stuff that's interesting, I sometimes do, and I try to keep it as brief as possible. I'm just saying someone new to our meetings could easily conclude that given the watered down spiritual stuff and steps talk you sometimes hear, that it is in fact the same thing. And it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's confusing and
Mm-hmm.
it's harmful to some people. Now,
Right.
I don't know this gentleman that walked away, and maybe he will do perfectly well and find another solution somewhere. And maybe in one of these other things that I rejected, like the smart or the SOS or whatever, who knows? Or maybe he'll get sober on his own, which some people do. But
I will tell you you're I think that I agree I do agree with you that we do have to be more sensitive to the idea that there are people who have been absolutely traumatized by religion, and those 12 steps are dogmatic as hell. And when you tell people that you're working the 12 steps, it's by implication, it's that everybody should be doing this. And we do have to be kind of careful. I'll give you an example of something that I did a couple days ago. I went to a Zoom meeting in Australia, and it was an ID meeting, which is where you share your stories. And so I shared a snippet of my story of when I first realized that I had a problem and decided to get help. And as I finished this little story, I said, and that is your first 3 steps. Bam, done. So at the end of the meeting, this woman who I spoke with the week before, very nice lady, she was traumatized by religion. She was a pastor and realized that she was an atheist and has just had a really hard time with with the dogmatic her dogmatic past, I guess. But anyway, so at the end of the meeting, she said, do we really have to be concerned about these steps? It's like the steps really bothered her. And then one guy said, he went on and on and on about how great they are and blah blah blah. And then as I was listening to her and listening to him talk about how great they were, I immediately regretted that I had to frame my story in the context of steps. I could have just told the story without saying anything about the goddamn steps, right?
well,
there was no
I yeah.
reason for me to do that.
Well,
And
yeah,
so I
you
guess
had a different
the
experience.
moral of the story is I've learned that no, I don't have to do that. I mean, and I need to be careful if I'm going to run around talking about steps all the time. There could be somebody in the room who's been damaged by the steps, who's been damaged by some
Right.
church or some religion. So you've got a point. We
Well,
really
I
need to be
mean,
careful.
but I always have to loop back to how lucky I was
Yeah.
having, entered this thing in a very ultra liberal, big East Coast city.
Yeah.
And
And
even,
started out with a secular group too.
yeah, even and our secular group that was formed in '88 when I was walking away. I was walking away just like this guy that
Yeah.
we are talking about before. I was out the door and I almost drank the summer before, Tom and Maxine founded our group. And I've always said I owe my life and my ass to Tom and Maxine because they showed me a way as two hardcore atheists how they could, navigate and negotiate. And we didn't have AA Beyond Belief. We didn't have the
Yeah.
internet. We didn't even have other meetings to communicate with. I mean, all we knew was there was some atheist meetings in Chicago that Tom had gone to
Mm-hmm.
back in the late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd sort of heard that there was Charlie's meeting in Hollywood that I hooked up with later,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
late Charlie Pulitzer and the West Hollywood meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew there were there were always atheists in New York City,
Mm-hmm.
bless them. I
Mm-hmm.
love them to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my favorite atheists live in Manhattan. But we didn't have any of this other stuff. We didn't know. We were alone.
Right.
Okay. So we had to be within the context of conventional AA at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't even cross our minds not to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I can easily see how somebody could conclude that we need to be within their context.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you and I both know, John, we share offline some communications we get from people who
Mm-hmm.
we would never publish
Mm-hmm.
or publicly talk about,
Mm-hmm.
who reach out to us when you get emails, I get
Mm-hmm.
emails, whatever, who reach out to us and tell us basically that they didn't know that they could be the way I am and categorically reject the step.
Right. Right.
What is this? I mean, who is this creature?
Right.
Well, I categorically rejected the fucking steps in
Yeah.
1987.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a lightning bolt shoved down my throat. Okay.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a bottle of tequila delivered to me in the middle of the night in a hotel and God knows
Mm-hmm.
where I used to travel all the time. Who knows where I was? But at least I didn't have a bottle of tequila in the middle of the night
Right.
because this way, this secular way, saved me from that. All right. So, yeah, I mean, we've got all kinds of people out there. You mentioned the Bible Belt. Here's a little quote just in the last week from the Bible Belt. Okay, I know that we call this a spiritual, not religious program, and that plenty of atheists and agnostics have been able to use AA to get and stay sober.
Mm-hmm.
But living in the Bible Belt and becoming increasingly aware of the Christian influences of the program
Mm-hmm.
is making it difficult for me. My total motivation is to make it less difficult for this anonymous person who I'll never see, probably never talk to, probably never meet. We have a way to do that. And
So
that is
that
to
person is
eliminate this
that person is
foolishness from
reaching
our
out
program.
to that person is reaching out to this Facebook group, letting them know that he or she is struggling with, what to do. Like that they've come to this realization that, what, this is a religious program, and I am
Right,
having a problem with
right.
that.
Yeah,
And they're just
right,
kind of
right,
and they're
right.
just kind of coming to grips with it. And so they're reaching
And
out
then
to
we
other
loop back,
people who have maybe gone down that
right,
road.
right. But then we loop back to a large number of people using that organization in New York City as their frame of reference.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the leader in Zoom worldwide, the leaders of Zoom worldwide, I believe are the secular groups, the people that have done more, had more penetration, been earliest to the platforms, and probably most active in promoting this idea of during the pandemic having a program of recovery that they can live with, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But this week I came across this letter from the General Service Office. Did you see this thing?
Why don't you go ahead? Can you read it? I I
What?
I, I, I skimmed through it.
Well, this letter from the General Service Office to somebody out there, I don't know, some group. I won't go into all the details of whatever group it was, but they're saying that we've all of a sudden we've decided to recognize we may recognize online groups and encourage their participation, listing those groups who ask to be listed, blah 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 blah. And everybody would say, Hosanna. Oh, the General Service Board formed a committee to explore for future possibilities
Yeah.
for participation of online groups in the US Canada service structure.
Right.
Explore the possibility. And then they say, uh, there is much work to be done to implement these actions, and patience may be needed as we navigate this new territory together.
Yeah. They're
Well,
they're really
fuck you.
they're really
I
slow
mean,
to
the
the game.
new territory was mined by us, was promulgated by us, and we don't need the imprimatur of you or anyone else to do this, if that's what
Well,
you want to do.
they've been talking for some time. It's kind of ridiculous because there were some online meetings back in the 90s. First of all, it started with email groups, and then there were some online groups that met through Skype or whatever. Not very many, but there were some. And there was even an online intergroup of Alcoholics Anonymous, which still exists. And there's been talk for quite some time about incorporating those online groups into the service structure so that they would have like a GSR that would represent them at the General Service Conference. And the problem that they had was AA, the general service structure of AA, was organized in geographical areas. And when you have an online group, where are you going to put it? Well, you'd put it in an online group category. But anyway, yeah, AA has been the general service office has been frustratingly crazy slow with adapting to the 21st
Can,
century, quite
can you
frankly.
enlighten me as to something?
Hmm.
What do these people do for us? Let me loop back to my initial question. What conceivable use do they have to us at this point in our history? We
Well,
don't need their lists like we used to rely on printed lists. Who's
right.
going to distribute the printed lists but an AA General Service Office,
Well, what's
right?
interesting about the General Service Office and the General Service Conference is we individual groups and individual members don't really need them because they actually are supposed to work for us. So the group is the highest authority in AA. It's totally free to do whatever the hell it wants
That's
to
the
do.
inverted pyramid.
Yeah,
That's such bullshit.
but it's true.
Okay,
It's
it's
true.
hierarchical
But it's
right from
true.
the get go. You and I both
There's
know
nobody at the General
hierarchy.
Service Office that's going to tell your group in Washington D.C. what it needs to do. Your group decides what it's going to do. Your group
Right,
decides
right,
what they're going to
right,
do at their
right,
meeting.
right.
Nobody
But
tells you what to do. Hmm?
the overarching messages, the literature, the overarch, everything is centrally controlled
That's true, and
by
that's
a small
crazy.
cabal of people
Well,
who've been around
but
forever.
that's the General Service Conference. The problem is we're just the people that want some sort of change with literature are never going to see it because they're so
Well,
far
yeah.
outnumbered.
I
Because
don't care about them. Excuse
yeah,
me, John. I don't care about them.
okay, all
They're
right.
irrelevant to me.
You brought
They've
it
been
up,
irrelevant to me since I went to my first international convention in
right?
1990, which I briefly spoke at in the first atheist meeting there from the floor. When I first went to that first convention in 1990, I saw what a convoluted, hierarchical mess it was. And I knew certain people here in Washington personally, like Sandy Beach, and both of them dead.
Did
Late
you see the
Sandy
post about
Beach and
Sandy
the late
Beach?
the late Mr. Attitude of Gratitude, Hal Marley. And I knew how it worked
Uh huh.
because they were the ones running around the place, running the place.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I knew that all this bullshit about inverted pyramids and, we serve you and all that stuff. No, they want us to serve them. Let me give
Mm.
you another example from the Facebook group. New member here. Thanks for adding me. I've been sober in AA for 7 years now. I've just in the last few months been going through a radical shift in my religious and spiritual views.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a hard time reconciling them with my AA program.
Gotcha.
No shit.
Well,
Okay.
hey, I've
We
been
are
there.
here for them.
Yep.
We are here for them.
Right.
They are not here for them. We are here for them. And we don't need them
Well,
at all.
that person is probably going through what I went through, but the difference is they have a Facebook group to reach out to, and I didn't. And what's going on, perhaps what happened with me is I'd been in AA for quite some time and came to the conclusion that I was an atheist and was quite comfortable with it, but then looked at AA and thought, well, how the hell am I going to fit in here? John, I thought I was going to have to leave. I thought I'm going to have not, there's no, there's, well, I can't do anything here. I have no use for it. But then what I did, which you wouldn't approve of, obviously, is I said, well, I can still make sense of this stuff in a secular way. I can see the underlying actions and events beneath all this religious garbage. And that's what I chose. What I chose to
Well,
do, and then
they
started a secular AA meeting.
right. They expect you to sign up to an irrational belief system that you know to be wrong. And that sets up a cognitive dissonance within many people that results in endless misery that I see. Well, we talked about misery on the last podcast, but I see that over and over and over again. I don't have a lot of, you know, truck with this smart recovery stuff personally,
Yeah.
but they do go into one of the things I do like that they do is that they look at critically irrational belief systems.
Right.
In their statement of purpose, they say something like this: an irrational belief may be something like, I'm too weak to stop drinking. Well, if you're too weak to stop drinking, who could possibly save you? What could possibly save you if you're too weak to stop drinking? There's only one thing, and that's a pie in the sky.
Mm.
Some supernatural entity that's going to come down and anoint you in town's hospital while you're stoned on belladonna.
Mm.
Okay. Or something like that. Or you're off in the 50s, taking acid, trying to get sober that way, or whatever Wilson was doing
Right.
later on in his checkered career.
Right.
But, the irrational belief systems are the underpinnings of this organization that we pay homage to still. And that makes no sense to me, John, whatsoever. So where do we go? Where are we
Well,
going? What do we do?
you know, uh, obviously, AA started from a religious organization, the Oxford Group, obviously,
I,
and the
I've,
steps and
I've gone,
everything was all
yeah,
about finding God. There's no doubt about it.
yeah, I,
Over time, there's been a lot of people who have realized that wasn't necessary, and some people don't do anything with the steps. Some people do. I mean, we're never going to be able to change the history. I mean, if
no,
individual people don't want anything to do
no,
with AA,
no,
they can stop going to
no.
AA meetings,
Oh, wow. You're the one
right?
coming up with a point here today. You're the one coming up with the final point of this discussion.
Uh-huh.
Okay. We need to write our own history. We are in the process of writing our own history, creating our own paradigm that works in the real world, not this world of fantasy and codified religion and written down methodologies for living your life. We're coming up, I believe, with some core beliefs about abstinence
Yeah.
and about how we go about achieving it,
Yeah.
right? So that's really what this thing is about. And that's not, in my opinion, what Alcoholics Anonymous is about.
Yeah. So you've
Alcoholics
got
Anonymous is about a belief system.
so right now you've got about maybe 400 or maybe 500 AA groups that have secularly formatted meetings. They're all over the world. People go to these meetings. They generally don't have they don't open and close with a prayer, and most of them probably don't bother with the AA literature. So that's happening right now. And then there's some sort of a organization that puts on a conference every, what is it, 2 years?
Yeah, it's going to be 3 years this year
Yeah,
because
but
of
there's
COVID.
like that
But
puts on a
yeah,
conference
2 years.
so that these people can kind of network, and plus they have these social groups and so forth, social um, whatever internet groups online that they can interact with. So you have this network of people going on, and then the only thing that you're missing is if it was even necessary to have any sort of literature, But what's being done there is individuals have written books and selling it, but they are the ones
Well,
individually profiting from
literature
the
is
books.
evolving in this sense. Literature is evolving from the ground up through, and I know you're not a big fan of written articles anymore because they're
Oh,
such a pain in the ass,
yeah.
but uh, that literature that's evolved since Rogers started publishing in 2011, was it? He started
Mm-hmm.
publishing, and then accelerating rapidly after 2014, and you
Mm-hmm.
getting involved with AA Beyond Belief,
Mm-hmm.
and the other people that have sort of chimed in
Mm-hmm.
on the internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm amazed. I mean, uh, when I was waving my cell phone at you earlier, saying we don't really read what we see on Facebook, we react to it,
That's really
right?
interesting. You're absolutely right about that. You are absolutely right. I mean,
When
that's what it's there for, isn't it?
right, right
That's the way
now,
they designed it.
somebody needs to. If I was younger and had 5 years, I would mine that Facebook archive for the last 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
just in the Beyond Belief Facebook group for the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet I could come up with one hell of a book
Yeah.
based on what I've seen. I was just for grins and giggles. I was looking at this thing that I sent you, and I said, oh shit, they're going to say Huey's complaining about AA again. You know, he just hates AA. I don't hate
Mm-hmm.
AA. I love secular alcoholics,
Mm-hmm.
is what I do. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate AA. I love us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't love AA, but I certainly don't
Mm-hmm.
hate them.
Right.
And, just in the last 1 month on that Facebook group, I'm so old that I have to print stuff out. I can't just sit here and scroll over and over. And I was having problems with Google today, and you don't want to hear about it. But I was going through, and I started cutting and pasting into Word some of these excerpts from that Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
And when I printed it out, and I still haven't completely gotten into it, analyzed it, I said, holy shit, look at all the things that are in here in just the course of a month. Our narrative is evolving really from the ground up.
Mm-hmm. True.
And I wish I had a amanuensis or assistant, or, I'm still
Mm-hmm.
trying to get my last book published. I've got a lot of things I'm trying to do that have nothing to do with this. But I think eventually someone should start mining what has already been thought of and written down and debated. All
Mm-hmm.
right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as far as this online thing goes, our dear friend in Texas, the philosopher king of West
Mm-hmm.
Texas, Mark C. and I,
Mm-hmm.
are constantly going after each other because he wants to still go to those Texas meetings, and,
Right.
as the resident heathen, trying to spread the good word inside those meetings. And I'm always yelling at him saying, no, 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 that's a waste of our time. We have to go another way. And we're constantly battling with each other. We're good friends. And somewhere there in the middle, there may be the truth. I don't know. You see where
I
I'm coming from?
yeah.
Because of the debate, because of the push and pull, the dynamics
See,
of
I was fortunate because I live in the metropolitan area that I could start a secular AA meeting and I didn't have to go fight with anybody. All I had to do was start a meeting,
it,
and
right?
there's plenty of people in the city that wanted to go to it. Now, if I lived in where he does, which I guess is in um, I don't know, way out west somewhere in
West Texas,
Texas, West Texas, and
West
it is not,
Texas. We'll
you
just
know,
we'll just generically say West Texas.
yeah, and he doesn't have a huge population center to draw from of people who want to attend secular AA meetings. That could be more difficult. I mean, I know he's
Yeah,
got
and
something going on Zoom right now.
he pulls me up short every once in a while. I mean, I've lived in Washington D.C. all my life. I'm in Montgomery County, Maryland, which is right up at one of the most. And my congressman is Jamie Raskin. Okay, he doesn't have anybody like Jamie Raskin in West
Right.
Texas, right? So he's got a different situation than I do and a different lifestyle than I have. But we share the common problem and we both know at root what the common solution is,
Yeah.
right? Which is making a decision, going to meetings, coming up with some idea of how we share, understanding what abstinence is about, and then helping other people. Like I go
Mm-hmm.
on and on and on about like a broken record because to me, that's what we need to be doing. And
Yeah.
every minute we spend, God, I'm going to start waving that letter from the General Service Office around again and look like some kind of nut on the internet
Mm-hmm.
waving letters. But, every minute we spend with those people is time we're not spending helping secular alcoholics and addicts who are struggling with this cognitive dissonance of being told that they have to believe in something irrational or they will die,
Right.
which they are told over and it's not just in those
Yeah.
groups.
They're
It's
being
in these
told.
places that charge 15,000 or
Oh,
50,000 a month. I mean, if you
yeah.
go to the one in Malibu, I've heard it's 150,000 or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever. They charge you all that money to tell you that you've got to get on your knees.
But the people who are posting in the Facebook group are people who are actually reaching out for help
Right.
from fellow secularists, and they're getting that help. They're
They
getting
are getting some
shared
help.
experience. Some of
Right.
them are saying, "Fuck it, I don't want it."
Right.
Some of them
Right.
said, "Hell with this, I don't need
Right.
this." And they're gone.
Right.
But there are
And
others who are saying, "Boy, I'm really struggling with this," and then they're getting input from people who've already been through that. So that's good.
here's a thought. That's good. But here's a thought. How many others, like this guy I alluded to earlier, who's told us adios this
Mm-hmm.
week, how many others are sailing out to die? We know what our success rates are. They can go nowhere but up from the cellar that they're in now. And every life we save is worth whatever exertion we go through here because of the demonstrable benefits. In our case, the two of us, over decades now, you know, over 3 decades of getting the demonstrable benefits of doing this every day. We can't lose sight of the person who is suffering with misery, pain, and death right now,
Mm-hmm.
but without the necessity, like the others, of grabbing them by the collar and forcing some irrational belief system down their throat.
Yeah.
That's why every minute we spend talking about the General Service Conference, the AA local meeting, the AA group, the AA regional conference,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that, and then communicating with them and trying to kowtow to them is not only a waste of time, but I believe, it's hazardous to the life and well being of our fellow atheist and agnostic alcoholics.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're wondering why I get, a little worked up and start waving letters around on the screen, that's the reason. Because you and I both know that for every person we hear from telling us that we've helped them, there are 10 or 15 or 20 or more others who will never reach out because they're reticent or they don't do that. Or, how many people write letters to the editors? Not many.
Right. Right.
Okay. So how many people reach out on the Facebook page and are honest? How
Right.
many are like that guy taking a look at us, or like my other friend somewhere else who I won't identify,
Mm-hmm.
who looks at us and says, "Oh, I'm not going to put up with that shit. It's just like them." And I already walked away from them.
Mm-hmm.
Why should I engage with you when you're just like them?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole crux of what I'm trying to get at here.
Yeah.
So, what
Yeah.
do we do, John? Where do we go? What kind of fellowship do we want to have?
Well,
That's a rhetorical question, by the way.
Oh, okay. So I don't have to answer it then.
No, it's a rhetorical question. You can,
Oh,
you can in fact answer rhetorical questions.
okay. All right then. Um, okay. Well,
A
personally,
question for our listeners. I'm
a
positing
question
that.
for the
Sorry
listeners.
to interrupt
Here's my view on this on what you're asking is I I think that I just leave it up to each individual person to do whatever the hell they want to do with their own recovery. I don't want to be lumped into any sort of a we, that I am part of whatever everybody, the group wants to do, the organization wants to do. I'm not into that. I have my friends at my own local little group here that I care about, that I want to get more involved with now that things are kind of, we're meeting in person again. I want to be more involved with the recovery community in my state. I'm not at all interested in the General Service Conference in New York and all these people that are going to secular AA meetings. That's great. I go to them. I think that they're very helpful. The people who are struggling with finding their place in those secular AA meetings, I get it. I've been there too. It's probably going to be a process of evolution. Um, I just don't know what the answer is. I mean, we could all. I mean, you'd have to, if you're not going to leave it up to, I mean, because it's so individual and the groups are so independent. I mean, if you wanted to be totally separate from AA, that would mean starting a new organization, right?
Well, we're not. We've
Right?
already, and I've gone through this before. Okay, elsewhere. We already have a new organization. We just have the wrong name. All right.
Okay.
It's just
So,
a matter of
and we've
labeling.
done that. So, okay. So you've got the talk about secular AA. So let's say
It's a
that.
matter. Yeah, it's a branding issue.
Okay. So let's say that you get that out.
It's
You
a
change it.
branding issue.
You change it to whatever. Okay. So I
Is
don't
it?
see. That's what I don't get because the thing was started just to put on conferences, right? So if you decide, okay, this is no longer putting on AA conferences, okay, super.
It never
So
was an AA conference to begin with.
it wasn't okay.
Not that I'm aware of. AA never sanctioned it from the beginning.
Well, it's
You
an AA
ask Pam.
conference in the
I don't
sense that
think
it
she
was put
got
on
permission.
by. It was an AA conference in the sense that it was put on by AA members, people that who attend
Well, there
AA
were people
meetings.
that said they were members of AA that were there.
Okay.
Okay, but as far as I know,
Okay.
it wasn't listed as one of their
Okay.
regional or
So anyway,
national
so
conferences.
yeah, you could do that. You could change it. Say, you know what? You can go there and say the International Conference of Secular AA is no longer that. It is now the International Conference of Recovery, Secular Recovery, something like that.
Yeah,
And we
I mean,
and
there are
we
people that are doing
and
that
and
spinning
we
off
and
and
we
stuff.
have absolutely nothing to do with AA. Okay. So now you've got a new organization. Great.
We already do.
Okay, you've got an organization, new name. Now, people that joined that were part of that organization thinking that it was they were putting on AA conferences are going to say, okay, fine, I don't want anything to do with that. And then you'll
Well,
just have
anybody
left.
that's been to one of our conferences would know it's not an AA conference. So
Okay. Well, that's how
that's
however
pretty
you
clear.
define that. I mean, I thought it was an AA conference. It was a secular, it was a conference of AA
Yeah,
members
come
from
sit down.
secular AA groups.
Come sit down next to me next time you see me at one of those things. I'll tell you
Okay.
all about how much of an AA
Yeah.
conference it is. But
But
no, I'm not talking about organizational infrastructure.
mhm,
Organizational infrastructure will evolve over time, like organizations always do.
mhm,
What I'm talking about is something more fundamental than that. And that's a mindset. That's what we are promoting. When you put up a podcast about the 12 steps,
okay.
there are some people that are being harmed,
Uh-huh.
in my opinion.
Okay.
I I I I would not do that. All
Mhm.
right, because I know for a fact that there are some people that are harmed by that. Now there are other people that would benefit from it,
Mhm.
and maybe the people that would be harmed by it, if they see it listed as a alternative, shouldn't go there. And I
Mhm.
often do that. I mean, when
Mhm.
I see things that you or other people put up that I know are just going to piss me off,
Mhm.
I'll give it a pass. Just like,
Mhm.
somebody sees my name pop up on the screen and they, oh, that asshole, I don't want to listen to him again. That's fine. We do that all the time. We make selections and we decide which organizations we're in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, maybe every episode should have some sort of a disclaimers, just to remind people that you define your own recovery. These
Correct.
steps, just because we're talking about a step, doesn't mean that we think that you
Well,
necessarily need to do this step. This is just, besides
right.
the
Well, I think it's like, um, what I'm saying though is that there's no hard and fast rule.
mm,
What I'm trying to do is to, in the whatever time I have left, is to spark a discussion whereby we understand that our main business is about recovery,
mm,
not about organizations, not about politics,
mm,
not about, you know, uh, websites or web pages or
right,
whatever. It's about what we can do on an individual basis to
mm,
help another recovering alcoholic,
mm,
however that occurs. I
right,
think you do great service for alcoholics many times
mm,
by doing the broadcasting that you're doing.
mm,
I try to do my bit in whatever small way I can do when I'm doing
mm,
these things. But also, and I know this is a case for you as well, when someone who it appears we might be able to be of assistance to talks to us or reaches out to us, or, I have people in other countries, other time zones message me in the middle of the night. And I make sure that whenever I get up and I see that message, the morning doesn't go by without me responding.
mm,
I'm not going to come up with any solution,
right,
but at least I'm going to come up with a response.
right,
The fact that there's another atheist, agnostic, or whatever we call ourselves, alcoholic out
mm,
there that can and will and does respond, and someone maybe with a little bit of experience that might resonate with someone else who does respond.
mm,
That's what's so important. And the more time we spend collectively or individually screwing around with things like, what does this or that organization think or do about or with us, is valuable time that is being wasted, that could be better directed
mm,
in terms of helping another alcoholic or addict
mm,
with the problem at hand.
mm,
And the problem at hand is drinking and using today, leading to premature death and disability.
mm,
That's what it's really about.
yeah,
I deal with wet alcoholics. I see them, unfortunately, too often.
mm,
And in every case, I'm dealing with disabilities that could have been avoided. And the tragedy of that, both in some of my personal friendships and obviously people that I encounter in the program, is really what's driving me forward. There are people that have disappeared from the groups here in DC, my group in DC,
mm,
and I later find out that they passed away from
mm,
this or that cause
mm,
of some sort of organic or brain disorder or cancer or heart, some kind of thing that comes back to me.
right,
And I can't help but think, maybe if we'd done a little more or things had been a little better, this person wouldn't have gone quite so soon in that way. Not that we take on the responsibility
right,
for anybody else's sobriety, but if we've done our best to be available, then we've done our job. All this crap with AA is taking us away from our primary purpose. And that's one of the few AA phrases
mm,
that I actually sign up to.
mm,
And we know what our primary purpose
yeah.
is, don't we?
Well, I at one time, for a couple of years anyway, was involved with the general service structure, I guess, working with our district and our area and so forth. And I came to the conclusion that kind of work wasn't for me, that it was kind of a waste of time for me. I'm like, I have zero interest in anything that the General Service Conference does because it doesn't really have any impact on me personally or my group. It really doesn't. So I just kind of ignore that kind of crap, and just deal with uh, my immediate people in my life
Right.
that are I'm dealing with. And I think the best way that we can help anybody is that one-on-one communication that we
Right. Well,
have.
and what I'm positing here, and I don't even know what you're going to end up calling this thing in the end when you put it up, but what I'm positing here is essentially that the further away we get from dealing with that organization, the more time collectively we could have in coming up with more viable solutions for atheist and agnostic alcoholics that are seeking refuge
Hmm.
from this stuff.
Hmm.
Just listen to some of the random, I could go through these Facebook pages and come up with hundreds of them. We could be sitting here all day talking about that
Hmm.
stuff,
Yeah.
right? And it's almost a universal problem. People who have misunderstood what sobriety is all about and been harmed by that misunderstanding. If you understand sobriety to be anything other than abstinence, you and if you understand sobriety being conditional on things other than abstinence, like a certain belief system or the necessity of having one of these things called sponsors,
Do you see
or
a
the
difference
necessity of
between
doing this.
sobriety and recovery?
Excuse me?
What about, is there a difference between sobriety and recovery?
Sobriety is recovery, and recovery is sobriety.
Okay. So,
There's no recovery without
so what
sobriety.
this is what I would say. I would say that sobriety is abstinence and recovery is a process of change.
Well, it depends on what's changed to you is de-evolution to me. Okay,
Right. Right.
perhaps.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's true.
so I say that that sobriety gives you access to yourself, and
Yes.
you yourself, your sober self, will evolve in a way that is more positive for you
And that
in
evolution
general.
is
It
that
will
evolution is
evolve.
what I would call the recovery process.
That
That's
but it's an evolution,
Yeah.
okay?
And again,
Some
it's all
people,
semantics, but it's important in
right,
the
it's
sense
all semantics,
it's
but
it, but it's important in the sense that people will say, if because I agree with you, I'll say sobriety is abstinence. Period. Boom. And people say, John, no, there's much more to sobriety. And I say, no, I distinguish sobriety and recovery. Sobriety is
well,
not using the
once
substance. Recovery is doing some sort
right,
of a
well, once you're
process of
abstinent,
changing.
I mean, you know, uh, your income may go up. You may meet someone you can get along with. You may father a couple of kids. You may start businesses overseas. You
Hmm.
may finally meet someone that
Hmm.
is the love of your life
Hmm.
and have a life beyond your wildest dreams, or
Hmm.
you may not.
Right.
Okay. In my case, particularly having survived COVID, which I thought was a very problematic thing for me, given some of my other issues. I tell everybody, all my friends, everybody, I'm far luckier than I deserve. And that's not the case for everyone. All right.
Yeah.
Other people's benefits are incremental. Other people's benefits are astronomically greater than mine have ever been.
Hmm.
All right. There are people that have gone on to world fame and fortune and Oscars who started in this abstinence
Right.
process. We see them around all the time.
Right.
Okay. People that have gone on to great accomplishments in science and literature once abstinence took hold. All
Hmm.
right. Which I haven't been able to do. I've been able to do my own little things, but nothing near where I could have ultimately dreamt it could have gone.
Yeah.
And that's fine because what I got is what I got. And what I got is what I got because I stopped drinking and I remained abstinent.
Hmm.
I would have had nothing. I would have had less than nothing because
Yeah.
I would have been dead.
Yeah.
All right. So, how do we spend more time and do more things trying to communicate with people in a more positive and productive way. I'm not even going to say that this AA stuff is all negative. It
Mm-hmm.
certainly isn't
Mm-hmm.
all negative for the people that sign up
Mm-hmm.
to that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I know too many people that have benefited from that to negate that. But for those of us who categorically rejected that stuff up front, it's a tough road. And we need to be more available to those people. And frankly, I think that many of us in this secular fellowship are missing some of the opportunities we could have to be more productive
Mm-hmm.
because we don't have much time on this planet. I mean, when you get to be 72, you realize that you don't have a lot of time.
Right.
Okay. My kids are 25 and 27, and they have a totally different
Sure.
conception of time than
Right.
I do. Right. And, here in these years, I've begun to value that commodity a hell of a lot more.
Right.
I wish I could get some of it back.
Mm-hmm.
I need about 10 or 15 years back. But guess
Mm-hmm.
what? I'm not getting it back.
Yeah.
So every hour that we're not productive for our fellow alcoholics and addicts is an hour lost that could possibly have been used responding to an email, stopping for coffee after a meeting, or chatting some other way in a way that could have benefits that we don't even realize. Maybe we'll never realize.
Well,
So,
one good thing about being dead, though, it'll be like we've never existed, and none of this will ever matter.
well, being dead, well, it's part of, it is like never existing in the sense of any
It's
kind
like
of
we wouldn't even know we've
physical.
had this conversation.
Yeah, the physics of death are absolute.
Yes.
But I do believe that there is a human continuum that
Well,
we are
no,
part
you're
of,
right. I mean,
and that
you're right.
this
I mean, we want to leave something behind,
this part of the
even though we
wheel,
won't be aware of it when we're gone.
we won't be aware of it, and
We want
you
to
know,
while we're alive.
right,
We want to do our
right.
best to
Well,
make the world a better place.
who knows what these digital and human artifacts we leave behind
Yeah,
are going to evolve into.
true, true.
Probably not much, but maybe more than we thought.
You never
We
know.
don't know.
Yep, yep,
We'll never know, as you
yep.
quite
They might find a video of you and then make a artificial intelligent robot out of it.
yeah, right, right. I took enough acid back in the 60s to turn myself into some kind of robot. I'm
You never
lucky
know.
I quit in 1972. At least I quit
Hmm.
that thing early enough, unlike some others. But I think we're of a mind maybe
Yeah.
that this institutional codification of things is nowhere near as important as our interactions with our fellow alcoholics directly,
Oh,
not
yeah.
this indirect stuff through the organization or the general board or you know,
I can agree with
it's,
that.
we have to be, um, gosh, I'm going to maybe use one of their phrases. We have to get into action.
Right. We do.
And
No, I
everything
hear
that
you.
keeps
I
us
agree with
from
you.
action is something that's inimical to where I want to be.
Right.
I want to die in motion. I do not want to die, sitting. I want to die in motion,
Hmm.
right? Now, Mick Jagger's probably going to die in motion in a very different way than I am. But, like St. Mick, I want to keep this going
Hmm.
to the end.
Hmm.
And in this context, the only way for us to keep going is to be able to share our experience in an honest way. And we're
Yeah.
not doing that when we're hung up on some organization or group or steps or code or books or any of that shit. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think maybe, oh boy, I see that countdown clock. It's
Hmm.
like that I'm in a congressional testimony
Yep.
and
Yep.
they have that you don't see it ever on TV, but there's
Yep.
this clock right in front of you and it's counting down
Hmm.
to the final seconds. So I think we've reached those final seconds,
I th-
and
it's
we
been
want to be as good as we can possibly be, John.
yeah.
And I
You've done a
don't
great
think the way
job.
we're doing it
I
now is as good as we could possibly do.
You've done a great job. It's been an interesting conversation. I've enjoyed it. I think that other people are gonna get something out of listening to it. I don't disagree with you. Is the thing is what always cracks me up is I don't really disagree with you, but I just want to be careful about just defining
Well,
what some of the stuff
you're sort of
means.
a diplomat in the middle of all this stuff too, whether you
Yeah,
know it or not.
but my evolution has been over a period of time is giving less of a shit over time about a lot of this stuff.
Well, I really don't give a shit what people think of me anymore. That's what it
No, no, me either.
I couldn't give two rats ass about that,
And it's a great
obviously.
freedom to not give a shit, isn't it?
Oh, I'll tell you, man, freedom, there's nothing like it. Well, we've gone past the witching hour
Yes, we
here,
have.
and I think
Okay.
maybe if we accomplished anything, we talked uh, about what we should be doing, which is maybe in the end to try to be of the greatest use as individuals we can be
Yeah.
and forget about some of these irrelevancies like Alcoholics Anonymous Inc.
You're
or
right.
whatever the fuck they call themselves.
Well, you've got
God,
the
I said
last
fuck
word.
again. I'm in trouble now. You're going to get complaints.
I think I've cussed more than you.
Oh, I think you're going to get complaints about this. We'll see. Keep me in the loop.
All right. So I thought that was going to be pretty hot, and it was. It was a hot conversation. That's what you want to call it. I enjoyed it though. It's always fun to talk with John, and he'll be back again, and we'll be talking more about all of this stuff. And it's good. I mean, we all we want to do is just do the greatest good that we can do with the time that we have left. And thank you, John, so much for coming back here again. It's been great talking to you, and I do appreciate everything that you have done to help me and this podcast and the community at large. It's been great. So thank you so much for that.
We're doing our own little bit to be useful. That's
And
all.
indeed. Okay.